We know we're taking oops. We know we're taking your lunch hour. So thank you so much for joining us. This is a wonderful turnout, and I'm very excited for this recovery session. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a student here at Body Brave. And I want to welcome you all to what we hope is the first of many recovery sessions. So these recovery sessions are designed to provide education and also be a little interactive. And their purpose is to provide a little extra support throughout recovery. And today's topic is body checking, and not the hockey kind. We're talking about the kind of body checking that might be a manifestation of poor body image. So we'll start about learning about body checking from our clinician, Dr. Karen, and then we'll hear from our panel of individuals with lived experience. So we have Sonia and Alexis here today. And if you have any questions throughout today's session, just send us a message in the chat box. And the last 15 minutes of today's session will be dedicated to answering participant questions. So we'll try to wrap it up by 1 o'clock, and I'll pass it over to my co-facilitator, Nicole, to introduce herself and our panel today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So like Sarah said, my name is Nicole. My correct pronouns are she and her, and I am also a student here at Body Brave. We're so excited to see so many people here today, especially for this first session. And I just wanted to add that we will be administering a brief survey in the chat at the end of today's session, and your feedback will really help us inform future recovery sessions. So we would really appreciate it if you could stick around until the end and take some time to fill that out for us. But for now, I wanted to introduce our amazing panel members. So first up, we have our clinician, Dr. Karen Trollope. So Dr. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure, thanks, Nicole. Yeah, my name is Karen Trollope, pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Body Brave. I'm a family physician. I've been in full service family practice for many years, and then now working full-time at Body Brave for the past 4 years. So thanks, Nicole, and I'm looking forward to participating in this very first recovery session.
Thank you so much. We're really excited that you could join us today. We also have 2 members of our team with lived experience that have come to share their personal experiences with you today. So we have Sonia and Alexis. So I will let them introduce themselves. Sonia, did you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. So my name is Sonia Kumar, and my pronouns are she and her. I am the CEO of Body Brave, but I am also someone with lived experience. So I struggled with an eating disorder for about 10 years, and it was very difficult. It was definitely a huge struggle. So yeah, I went to a lot of treatment programs, hospital as well as community-based, and I also was privileged enough to have private psychotherapy as well. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much. Alexis, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, hi. My name is Alexis Berger, and my pronouns are she and her. I am an MSW student at Body Brave, and I also am someone who has lived experience with an eating disorder. I struggled with an eating disorder for about 15 years. I went through various treatment programs as well, community-based and hospital-based, as well as some programs in the US. And I was privileged enough to have an outpatient therapist and dietitian as well, who made a significant impact on my recovery. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm really happy that you could join us here as well today. So now I will pass it over to Dr. Karen, if you would like to kick off the session for us.
Great, thanks so much, Nicole, and I apologize about my cell phone going off. It was a doctor returning my call about one of our clients, but I'll just phone her back after we're done. Yeah, so it's really exciting to be here as a part of our very first recovery session. And as Nicole mentioned, we're going to be having a focus on body checking, but this is part of the larger topic of body image. And so what is body image? Basically, it's the way what you believe about your appearance and also how you feel, physically experience your body. And body image struggles are really common with people who struggle with disordered eating or eating disorders. So among our clients at Body Brave, body image is often a very major issue that they have difficulties with. And there's certain groups of people that have a special risk of struggling with body image problems. People such as the LGBTQ plus community, athletes, people at transition times in their lives, like pregnancy or gender transition. These are all times when the focus on the body can become more significant. And people will often link their sense of self-worth to their body image. So that's why working on body image is always a part of the recovery process from an eating disorder or disordered eating. So that's a little bit about the background of body image. It's a huge topic though, and I'm sure we'll take it up in other aspects in future recovery sessions. But for today, we're going to zone in on one aspect of body image, and that is body checking. So people who are really concerned about their weight and shape can often spend a lot of time checking their body and appearance. And for example, they may check themselves in the mirror frequently, focus in on certain parts of their body, measure parts of their body using their hands or tape measure, or assessing the fit of their clothing, or sometimes weighing themselves frequently. We have some clients at Body Brave who describe weighing themselves multiple times a day. And body checking is a coping mechanism because people feel that by repeatedly checking the body, they're keeping tabs on what's happening with their body. But actually, it's an unhelpful strategy because it maintains that concern and preoccupation about weight and shape. And so when we're body checking, we're training our brain to focus on little tiny details. And the more we look for problems, the more we'll find them. This is one of the tricks our brain plays on us. If we're tuned into searching for signs of fatness, for example, we'll find them. And so it's something that is really important to address and something that people can really work on themselves if you're finding that you are body checking frequently. It can actually really help to address that issue and work on reducing the body checking. Another aspect of body checking can be body comparisons. And so people, when they're just walking down the street, can find themselves automatically comparing their body with others, or comparing their body with images on social media, or comparing yourself to a specific select group of people. But again, it's often unrealistic and unfair, those comparisons, because you're comparing yourself with a select group, which may be completely artificial, for example, photoshopped images in the media. Another aspect of body checking is body avoidance. And this is when people avoid looking at their body altogether. For example, wearing really loose clothing, avoiding looking at themselves in the mirror, avoiding clothes shopping, sometimes avoiding close physical contact with others, or particular sports like swimming. And body avoidance can be equally problematic as body checking. Some people alternate between body checking behaviors and body avoidance. And when we avoid things that we fear, it tends to make our fears worse, or at least keep them going. So by avoiding our body, we don't get the chance to find out whether our fears and predictions about our weight and shape are true or not. And it makes it very difficult to develop more balanced ways of thinking. So when we are thinking about what to do about body checking and avoidance, there are many very clear strategies to help about this. I might also mention that body image problems tend to persist even after the specific eating behaviors of an eating disorder have stopped. So body image problems can persist for a long time after that. And that's why sometimes in eating disorder treatment programs, they only address body image after the problematic eating disorder behaviors have resolved. But I still think it's important to talk about body image struggles wherever you are in your journey of recovery, because the body checking and body avoidance definitely heightens the problem of body image. So in the handout that we're going to be sending you, the resource handout, there's a really nice tool that you can use to practice reducing body checking or body avoidance. And you can just follow a step-by-step approach to determine the extent and frequency of how often you are doing the body checking or body avoidance behaviors. And once you've got a sense of how much it's happening and what kind of behaviors are happening, you can then work on choosing one or two target behaviors to make changes in, and then setting some specific goals. For example, you might want to reduce the number of times you weigh yourself, for example, or even trying to stop the behavior altogether, or just postponing the body checking behavior. So any of those strategies can really help to reduce the anxiety that goes around body checking. And then it's very helpful to monitor your progress, see how things are going, starting with easier goals and then gradually making changes. There's lots of good information about body checking and body avoidance on the internet, but also in the resources that we send out. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to send your questions through the Q&A box, and we'll have a chance to address them a bit later on in this session. But what will be really interesting now is to hear a little bit from our panelists about body checking and avoidance, because I think this is one of the aspects of these recovery sessions that I think is going to be really powerful when we actually get the voice of lived experience to comment about body checking and to talk about what their struggles were and how they managed to address this. So I think I'll hand back over to our facilitators and get them to get this discussion started.
Sure. Thank you so much, Karen. That was very insightful. And I think when you're describing some of these body checking behaviors, something that stood out to me is that some of them might seem very normal or common and might not be easy to recognize as being a problematic thing, or they might not even be aware that it's happening. So really interesting stuff. Thank you so much. And I think we have a lot to learn from Alexis and Sonia now as well. So we have a couple questions put together here, and then we'll open the floor to the participant questions. So if anything is coming up for you, please message us in the chat box, and I'll pass it over to Nicole to ask the first question.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you, Dr. Karen, again. So the first question that we have for our panelists today is, when in your journey did you find body checking was particularly a problem? So did you notice any things that triggered it, or did you find any specific time during your recovery journey that you really noticed it? Sonia, did you want to answer first?
Sure. Just before I get started, I just want to be clear in the sense that if there's anything that triggers you during this session, please feel free to reach out to a VCA through care team, or send us an email at info@bodybrave. Alexis and myself will be speaking strictly from our own lived experience, and we're hoping over the next, over the summer, ideally, is that we bring in many diverse voices and we get folks from many different walks of life and in different body shapes and sizes as well. So just wanted to clarify that before I move on. But yeah, so in terms of body checking, I think for me, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, no problem. The question was, when in your journey did you find body checking was particularly a problem?
So for me, I think the worst was really in, oddly enough, recovery. So when I was, just trying to really reduce my eating disorder symptoms, when I was trying to normalize my eating, there was a lot of discomfort that was involved with that. I wasn't, just to be transparent, I wasn't someone who had to go through a lot of sort of weight restoration stuff. But normalizing my eating was a very anxiety provoking thing that I had to go through. And that's when I really found that I was, no matter what I wore in terms of clothing, it would feel really uncomfortable. If I was sitting in a vehicle or something or biking, I would notice my body in a way that just would make me actually kind of panicky, to be totally honest. I also engaged in a fair amount of body avoidance as well, particularly in recovery. So I kind of swung between the two. And actually, as Karen was describing that, it's interesting because I had forgotten that body avoidance is a part of body checking. That's really interesting. So, and oddly enough for me, body avoidance could sometimes feel like a very healthy way to do things. Like I felt like maybe I was coping better, but it could go the other way very quickly as well. So I think really it was the recovery pieces where I felt, when I was really normalizing my eating, that's when I felt the most anxious and the most urges to body check. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that kind of lined up with what Dr. Karen was talking about too while she was talking. So thank you for sharing that. Alexis, did you want to share your experience with body checking and when in your journey you found it was most particularly a problem?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say my experience was very similar to Sonia's. My body checking behaviors really became a significant issue in particularly early recovery. I was just starting to think about what it was going to look like to be kind of following structured eating and beginning to look at weight restoration. I was not somebody who had to restore a ton of weight, but I did have to go through some of that process. And I was I really, really, really struggled with a lot of the behaviors that Dr. Karen was describing, with like weighing myself very frequently. I had some clothes that I would repeatedly put on to like measure myself. I I like I literally measured myself. So there was, and also like one thing that I didn't realize was body checking behavior, but then was brought up to me was when I would walk past windows, I would always have to check my reflection. And like, it didn't matter if I had just walked past a window a second before, I had to make sure I still looked the same. Um, and that was something that I really struggled with, particularly in early recovery. And body avoidance was something that I really struggled with, even in like I guess if you're looking at the stages of change, the pre-contemplation stage where I wasn't really thinking about getting better. Body avoidance was something that I really struggled with. And it impacted my life significantly in terms of hygiene, because I didn't want to shower because I didn't want to look at my body. And I wore baggy clothes, all those types of things. So yeah, it was particularly worse at like periods of time, and it happened multiple times where I would go through, like I would get better and then I would get sick again, and whenever I would be in that, just starting to entertain the idea of getting well again, that the body checking behaviors would ramp up.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like you both had different experiences with body checking and body avoidance, and it's really nice to hear from both of you. So the next question that I think a lot of people are also asking is, did you use monitoring as a way to become more aware of your body checking behavior, or are there any specific tools that you used that helped you just become more mindful of your body checking behavior and reduce it a little bit?
So for me, actually, Alexis brought up a good point about pre-contemplation and not wanting to shower and stuff. I really struggled with that as well. But in terms of what helped, it's interesting because I did find to some extent when it was at my worst, I was like looking in the mirror a lot. And also, yeah, I was just checking a lot wherever I could in windows, reflections and stuff like that. So what really did help me for a little while was actually covering my mirrors. So in my bathroom, I had a mirror for my face, and that's pretty much it. The other sort of full body mirrors, it just was really triggering for me every single time I looked at it. And then as time went on, I sort of slowly reintroduced that stuff as I was able to. So but there was a period of time where I sort of, I used avoidance as an actual coping mechanism in a way I think that was a little bit more healthy. So I did find that was really helpful. I personally didn't monitor my body checking. I did monitor my symptoms, but not body checking. I found just incorporating self-soothing techniques was really helpful. So although I didn't monitor, it was definitely, I really brought attention to it. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing that right now, rather than, so I had all these, ways of checking my body, whether it was clothing or mirrors or whatever it was. And I just brought attention to that. So I found that was really helpful, just realizing, oh, this is a behavior that is really impacting my recovery and it's making me anxious. And once I came to that sort of conclusion, or that behavior was brought out into the light, so to speak, then it became initially more anxiety provoking, and then slowly over time the anxiety really decreased, and I was able to kind of notice, okay, it's happening right now. And then for me, so self-soothing techniques were like, in the beginning it was like going out for a walk, like, okay, just get away from the situation and break the cycle. And then as time went on, I was able to explore it a little bit more, do some breathing exercises. I also had a really great therapist who was able to kind of talk me through some of the anxiety. One thing I did, which was really odd but really helpful for me, was if I was really anxious about it, I would go and sit in the snow if it was in the winter, and it would just bring like my anxiety level and like the heat that was building up in my body like down to a manageable place, because it was so sort of anxiety provoking for a little while. I also did have to like look at what clothing I found really sort of non-triggering for me. So I had to really do some hard work around that, just thinking, okay, am I using this particular piece of clothing to check my body in some way? So those are a couple of the techniques that I used.
Yeah, thank you so much. You shared a lot, and I feel like a lot of those are going to be really helpful. Alexis, did you have any that you wanted to say from your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was pretty similar to Sonia's again, in terms of I didn't really monitor myself or my body checking behaviors with any kind of tools. I just tried to bring my awareness to it as much as I could. And there was a lot of journaling involved. So I, if I noticed a body checking behavior that I hadn't noticed before, then I just tried to get really curious about why I was doing it. And I also had a really wonderful dietitian who checked in with me regularly as well about my body checking behaviors. And when I felt ready to give up some of the things like my scale or the clothes that I used to body check, or pictures that I had on my phone, I would bring them to her, and she would hold on to those for me in case I ever wanted them back, and then I never wanted them back. And so I think that was the most helpful. I also covered up the mirrors in the beginning. I didn't even have a mirror for my face, so I could have looked any kind of way. But I knew that like I would be way too hypercritical even of my face if I couldn't like body check the rest of me. And so I think avoidance has a place. Avoidance does not last forever, and it like you do need to learn how to look at yourself, because you're going to be seeing yourself in various places. But like when you're really trying to overcome those body checking behaviors, it can be helpful. And yeah, I think that mindfulness and self-compassion were probably the biggest things that helped me address my body checking behaviors.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I feel like a lot of the time you might not be aware that you are body checking as much as you are, so just kind of being more mindful of it would definitely be a really great first step. We do have a lot of questions in the chat box. It is very active. So I wanted to bring up a question from one of the participants. And it says, I didn't realize that avoidance was actually an aspect of body checking. I have so much trouble wearing fitted clothing or even showering with the lights on. Are there any tips to help with the avoidance side of this? So this isn't really the body checking side, but more on the other side, the body avoidance side.
So for me, I would say, yeah, body avoidance was part of also my healing. So I think it can be a little complicated, all of this, it's not as clear cut as we would like. But for me, the way I did it was I took it really slow, and I told someone that I trusted around me, this is my plan. What do you think? Because I know I wasn't always rational about it. I mean, I'm not always rational about anything, but especially when in recovery from an ED, I was like, okay, maybe I need to tell someone else what this is and if this makes sense. And then I'm just going to take it one step at a time. And then when I was reintroducing, say, like my mirror, I would actually sometimes call a friend and just be like, can you just be on the phone with me while I do this? And then I would like take the covering off the mirror, or I would even like throwing out clothes or giving away clothes that were really triggering was so hard sometimes, because to me, it felt almost like a failure. Like I'm not going to I'm never going to be able to fit into this again, or whatever it was in my mind that was going on. So just being able to talk through it with someone, and they're just like, it's okay, you're going to be all right, was just such a nice anchoring, so that I didn't fly up into my head and go to those really panicky places. Because once you're there, it feels so real. It's so hard to like talk yourself down from there. So I found that really helpful. What about you, Alexis?
Yeah, I think baby steps are the best way to go about it. I think that can be true for like everything in recovery. I think that when you look at recovery, it's just like a combination of baby steps that eventually add up to a life that is whole and healthy. And so if you are struggling with wearing fitted clothes or showering with the lights on or something, maybe it looks like, you know, instead of having all the lights on, maybe it looks like bringing in a night light. And then just like gradually increasing that, something like that. For me, it looked like, specifically with the clothing, I really, really struggled getting rid of the clothing. So I took that really slow. I had a trusted person in my dorm room with me because I was in college, and I was just hysterical. And I put it all in a bag, and then I put it in my car, and I literally drove around with my clothes in my car for 6 months before I was willing to let them go. And just having them out of my space and knowing that if I needed them, I could get them. That was helpful for me in a way of like, I was able to hold on to my eating disorder and let it go at the same time, which is okay as an intermediate step. For I guess for having trouble wearing fitted clothing, maybe it's like instead of wearing a sweater that's like 6 sizes too big, you get a sweater that's like 3 sizes too big, and like gradually work your way down from there. Um, things like that, just like break it down.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like the small steps, like that's definitely something that both of you have recognized. So that's a really good tip. Sarah, did you want to, I know you've been looking at the chat box a little bit more than me. Did you want to say the next question?
Yeah, sure. So there's one I think could be really interesting to discuss. How do we handle comments about our body? People say I look good, and that is hard because it encourages me to continue restricting to keep this shape. Do you want to comment on that, Sonia and Alexis?
Yeah, that is that's a good one, and it's very hard. The way I honestly, for this one, I found it really helpful. I was able to be a part of a recovery group at the time when I was really struggling the most with this, and being able to just understand that other people were also really struggling with that. And I think no matter where you are in recovery, or not in recovery, it can be very, very triggering. I found kind of coming up with some good responses ahead of time was really helpful. I find that people, they just don't realize most of the time. So they're not trying to be usually triggering or anything like that. And when I was able to kind of pull folks aside, if I had that relationship with them, just pull them aside and just be like, I'm going through a lot right now. I find it a little bit triggering. I hope, just if you could not say that while I'm here, I would just really appreciate it. I know it might, from your perspective, seem a little odd, but I would really appreciate that. Generally, people are really understanding and will be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that at all. I definitely won't say that because, as we all know, diet culture is so prevalent and it's just kind of second nature for people to compliment, and they feel like they're having a really good impact on you. So I generally found that was, that worked out well. And then having that pre-planned, because I'm someone in the moment, I have trouble processing right off the bat and like coming up with an answer or defending myself or whatever it is. So having that kind of written down, figured out, and then if I can't say it in the moment, then just pulling that person aside later was helpful for me.
Yeah. I think for me, I would say a lot of those things also apply. I think one thing that really helped me was when I was in a group and we were talking about this, we came up with like all these witty one-liners. And it was, I don't remember them right now, but they were just like so snarky and like passive aggressive that it kind of turned it into this funny thing. And so I was able to laugh at it more, and I would have an encounter like that. I would try to say one of those witty one-liners, or at least I would say it in my head. And then I would bring it back to the group and I would, say, hey, guess what happened? And we would kind of turn it into this like camaraderie, like, oh, diet culture, this is so nonsense. But I think also there are plenty of skills that you can learn through therapy or self-guided, like DBT, those kind of things, where you can learn the tools to have conversations that are hard, and you can learn how to be assertive and get your needs met through communication, which is like super hard, and I recognize that. But some of those skills like Dear Man and other things like that were also very helpful when I had relationships with the people who I was trying to talk to, or who were making those comments. And so I would go to them like Sonia and say, hey, like this really is not helpful. I am really struggling with X, Y, and Z. And I feel this way when I hear you say this. And if the person cared about me, they were typically very responsive. Didn't mean they never said those things again. It just meant that I had brought the awareness to that. And then I could be like, hey, you said this thing again, and I really don't appreciate it. And eventually, like a broken record, just repeating it like a broken record, the message started to sink in for people, and they realized, okay, I can say these things like whenever, just not around Alexis. And I think also that for my friends, me saying, hey, like, let's not talk about our body, it kind of changed the culture too. And people in recovery from an eating disorder have this like really great way of kind of being an agent of change against like really toxic stuff. And diet culture is toxic, and like focus on bodies and weight and all of that stuff, it's a waste of time for everyone. And so when you're able to say like, hey, I'm in recovery, this is a boundary that I'm holding for myself, and I need you to respect that, it can get other people to start changing the way they think too.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I really agree with that, Alexis. That's so true. I also just wanted to mention one more thing. Depending on what your life situation is, like for me, I did actually, so I'm half Indian. My dad is Indian. And in India, there is a hierarchy in terms of folks that are older than you. So you can't always set boundaries necessarily if you have a situation like that. But there are certain, at the time I was recovering, I have certain uncles who are great, but I couldn't necessarily say something like that. So in those cases, I really found it helpful to go back again to that group that I had, or a friend, and be able to really complain and be passive aggressive, just like Alexis was describing, get it off your chest in some way and find a way. Like for me, it was like finding a way to really care for myself. And because it really hurts, and it can really stall things. So having a plan to kind of deal with that and care for yourself and self-soothing, but also tapping into some sort of network, because recovery can be kind of counterculture. That we're hearing the opposite messages so often. And meanwhile, in recovery, we have to do something that is often opposite of what other people are telling us. But remember, I had to keep reminding myself that this is really, really important. And even if I don't feel like I'm necessarily worthy of it at the moment, I will at some point, and I've just got to keep going.
I have a favorite quote that's hanging on my wall, and it's from Brene Brown, but like I kind of co-opted it, and it says, "Worthiness does not have prerequisites," and that's still something that I need to be reminded of. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great quote. I really like that. There's a question in the chat that kind of goes off of that, and it is, what are some skills that you found the most helpful to begin separating body image and feelings of self-worth? So did either of you have anything to say about that?
That's such a good question. Wow, that's such a good question. For me, honestly, self-worth came when I started to really dive into really understanding who I am and what's important to me in my life. So for me, I discovered that some sort of like really understanding my own authenticity. I am a pretty emotional person, and being okay with my own emotions, that was really important. I also love being able to be in some sort of profession that has meaning. So at the time I was in a economics master's, and I was doing it because I didn't realize it, but I was doing it because I thought that was the thing to do. And when I realized, oh, this is actually not what my heart really wants, I started to explore, and it took many, many years to figure out what I actually wanted. But that started to shift the focus away from my body being the important thing, and more about like finding that meaning and purpose and who I really am, and how it would be okay for me to express myself in the world. So yeah, that, I don't know if that really made sense, but that was definitely my experience.
Yeah. Values for me were also a really big part of that. Doing a lot of values work and figuring out my identity outside of my eating disorder was really crucial. And a big part of that for me was actually coming out as queer. And I didn't even realize that that was something that was maintaining my eating disorder. But it was almost like as soon as I came out to myself, things just shifted for me. It was one of the pivotal moments in recognizing that, like, hey, like, I can exist in this world as I am, and like I'm okay. Um, and just uh, having that moment of just, I guess, revelation of like the fact that like I don't need an eating disorder to be somebody special. I don't need an eating disorder to have to make someone love me. Um, I can just be me, like, as a member of the LGBTQ community, um, and I can just exist. I think as far as skills go, um, the values piece and values work is probably a good place to start. There is so much out there about values. And even if you just like go and you find a list of values somewhere and you're like, hey, what are my top 5 values from this list and how do they fit into my life? And where is my eating disorder getting in the way of them? Like, how are my behaviors not lining up with my values? And then doing whatever you can do to make some changes. And maybe your body image and your obsessive like focus on your body image is getting in the way of connection. Maybe your value is relationships, and being so self-focused is a barrier there. Maybe that's something. Or maybe you really value adventure and you're so stuck in body avoidance that like it impedes your ability to go on all of these adventures and have all of these exciting life experiences. So I think just like being aware of what your values are can kind of guide you out of body image and into focus on body image and into feelings of self-worth, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. That was really powerful, Alexis. And I can relate a little bit. I always think about like just how much time and energy goes into thinking about this stuff. Another amazing question here. So did you ever struggle with dissociation when your weight fluctuated? I feel dissociated when I look in the mirror, like I don't recognize myself. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that's super powerful. Definitely. Definitely. I went through a period of time where I really felt like I was looking at myself from outside of myself. And the boundaries of my body didn't seem really real. Like I felt less coordinated. I was so kind of out of touch. And it was very, very scary. Definitely. And in those times, for me, what helped the most is really having some sort of really pretty significant self-soothing exercise. So it had to be pretty extreme for me to get back a little bit at least, so that I felt tethered at least to my body and I wasn't kind of floating away. So again, I would use techniques like sitting in the snow, or like leaving a situation, or doing something like with my hands. So I did a lot of knitting in recovery, and I knit like, I don't know, I still have like 35 leg warmers in my basement from when I was, and they're terribly knitted. Like I'm a terrible knitter, but it helped me just to do something with my hands was actually really helpful. And then also things like just, a gentle walk and trying to notice how my heels were touching the ground and how I was walking. That was a good way for me to kind of get back in touch. How about you, Alexis?
I also experienced dissociation when my weight fluctuated, and just at various points in my recovery, especially when I was in the process of weight restoring, and suddenly all of the feelings that I had been like suppressing came flooding back. it all just got too much for me and I would just dissociate. And in those moments, for me, it took practice, but for me, it was about like doing those things like Sonia mentioned before I was fully gone. And so it was like, I'm starting to feel kind of floaty and like not fully there. Like, what can I do right now to like stop myself from going any further into dissociation? And that for me also looked like a lot of temperature stuff. So whether that was, I lived in Massachusetts at the time, and there was a lot of snow, like entire first floors of buildings were just gone because there was so much snow. And so I would just like walk outside and I would just like literally walk into a wall of snow. I didn't have to lay there. I just like walked and my whole self was covered. And so that was helpful because it was just like, that's jarring, but it was soft. So that was also good. I really loved a frozen orange because the having a frozen orange gives you a texture to feel as well as the temperature sensation. So I would just like take out my frozen orange and play with it like it was a stress ball. And then I would put it back in the freezer for next time. I also liked to throw ice cubes because there was something about having the ice cubes in my hand to start and then throwing them at the ground and hearing them shatter. It like brought a bunch of different senses all together. And it also released some of the emotions that I had been like, that were like stored up in my body. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that I did.
Thank you so much. Yeah, those are all really great. We don't really have a ton of time, but we wanted to ask this question really quickly just to both of you. And it is, while you were recovering, what was the best part? So if both of you just want to share something really quickly, that would be amazing.
Yikes, quickly. Okay. The best part was, oh gosh, Alexis, do you have something that can be quick?
I think the best part for me was the relationships that I got to have, and like the depth and the quality of the relationships that were built while I was in recovery. And some of the relationships that I built were like not new. They were people who had been in my life before and who stuck around with me through the eating disorder, but were like, I got to engage with them on a new level, and I actually got to get to know them instead of like them just knowing my sick self. And so that was probably the best part for me, was just, feeling fully present and, able to experience a range of emotions and to eat food with my friends.
Yeah.
I think for me too, relationships, to be honest. I really loved meeting other people. This sounds strange, but I really loved meeting other people who were in recovery as well, because they were such amazing people. And they had such just so much potential and so much to offer, so many insights. Obviously so much so that I always want to hang out with people like that. They're for Body Brave. But yeah, it was really those relationships and learning from other people and just seeing that tremendous courage that people exerted and that they do while they go through recovery. It was personally very, very inspiring for me. And I still have this sense of gratitude for that and for that community. And even if I wasn't sort of actively participating, just to be able to be in touch or watch those people go through their lives has just been such a gift.
Yeah, I think that like there is kind of an almost automatic sense of camaraderie when you find out that someone else has recovered from an eating disorder. It's like, hey, you too, me too, let's be friends. And it works best when people are like recovered or like in recovery, in active recovery. But I think that that's such a unique part of eating disorders. And we're also like, we all like, the things that kept us sick are also the things that got us well. And that means that like we are incredibly determined, kind, compassionate, courageous people. And those are the kind of people I want in my life personally.
Thank you so much. Both of those were amazing answers. Thank you for all of your answers throughout the entire session. Honestly, like I'm so sad because there's still so many questions, but we don't have time to get to them all. I'm going to pass it back off to Sarah just for some final remarks.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a great question to end off on because it was a nice positive note. So I know you might be tempted to log off because we took over your lunch hour, but we just need 5 more minutes of your time. And we're going to put a survey in the chat that will take less than 3 minutes. And it'll help make our next recovery session even better. And then when you return from the survey, there's a little incentive. We're going to share an amazing resource that Dr. Karen referred to that has a body checking log, journal prompts, podcasts, affirmations, all those fun things. So the survey, Nicole just put it in the chat. So if you could go fill that out now, and then we'll meet back here in about 3 minutes to share the resource and say our goodbyes.
And just so everyone knows, we will make a note of the questions that have been unanswered, and we're going to try to find a way to answer those questions, even though they weren't addressed live. So thanks everyone so much for coming and answering the survey as well, because we want to keep improving. This is for all of you and for our community. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
And there's a question, VCAs can absolutely complete the survey. The survey should be a link if you scroll up just a couple messages. Here, we can send it again.
Yeah, I can post it again right now. Okay, so I just posted the, oh, wait.
You sent it to me.
Yeah, I just posted the link again, so that should be able to be filled out.
Maybe we'll give 1 more minute then.
Okay. So hopefully that was enough time for everyone. Sarah is going to add the resource that we created into the chat right now, and it has all sorts of information from today's session, plus some journal prompts, affirmations, and podcasts for you to explore and learn more. So thank you all for attending today. We will be taking your feedback into consideration, and we hope to implement the next recovery session in the next 2 weeks, hopefully. So keep your eyes peeled for more information about that. And if you have any other questions or concerns, please email us at info@bodybrave.com. Other than that, have an amazing afternoon. Seriously, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon again.